Hello, hello everyone, and welcome to P&P Live. My name is Heidi, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator of Politics and Prose, and I have the pleasure of hosting our event this evening. Thank you for joining us and tuning into this format, where we continue to bring authors and new books to you. I'm honored to welcome our guests this evening, Professor Ibram X. Kendi and Ashley Lukashevsky. If you have a question for our guests, you can click the Ask a Question button right at the bottom of your screen and add one there. You can also vote for the questions you want most answered. You also can click the green buy button below to get your own copy of Antiracist Baby from our website. Now on to the event you're waiting for. Ibram X. Kendi is a best-selling author, professor of history and international studies, and the director of the Boston University Center for Antiracist Research. He is an Ideas columnist at The Atlantic and a correspondent with CBS News. He's the author of 4 books, including Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America, which won a National Book Award for Nonfiction, and the New York Times bestsellers, How to Be an Anti-Racist and Stamped, Racism, Antiracism, and You, co-authored with Jason Reynolds. Ashley Lukashevsky is an illustrator and visual artist from Honolulu, Hawaii. Her work focuses on issues related to immigrant rights, racial justice, and LGBTQIA+ equality. Through her art, Ashley seeks to call attention to oppressive power structures and the connective tissues that exist between them, with the aim of dismantling them. She has communed and collaborated with various organizations, including the ACLU, Reform LA Jails, Planned Parenthood, and El Otro Lado. And now I turn the event over to them.
I think you're still muted, Dr. Kendi. Sorry, everyone, we're having a bit of technical difficulties. Stand by.
I think we're just going to give it another minute. Our tech person will probably be able to fix it. All right. Hi, Ashley. We're just going to probably bring him right back in so we can hear him. We think you still might be muted, Professor Kendi. Right, we're just going to get another minute here. Ashley, while we're waiting, I just wanted to say congratulations on the book birthday today. So we're so excited that we have you here and Professor Kendi to talk about the book.
Thank you. It's super exciting. Oh, it looks like he's back with sound.
Great.
Oh, no.
We lost you again. Your icon says that you're muted.
Okay, we'll wait a little bit more.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. It's been really exciting just going on social media and seeing all of these babies reading the book.
It's fantastic.
Pictures already, and it's just
and
a lot of hope.
Yeah. Just to give a quick preview for those who haven't seen it yet, it's an amazing book. Okay. Dr. Kendi?
Yes.
There we go. Perfect.
I think it was something about my headphones. Like when I come out, it would just automatically mute it. I don't know. So, but anyway, Ashley, I'm so glad we're able to to launch the book tonight together. And, I'm so excited that we were able to work together on this project. I guess should I share a little bit about sort of my inspiration for the writing, and maybe you can share a little bit about your inspiration for the illustrations, and then we can, I guess, we can read the book together, and then maybe talk a little more, and then, open it up for questions. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear about how the idea of the book first came to you. And I want to hear from you first, and then I think we should go through the book, and then I'm going to kind of break down a little bit of how I got some of the ideas for the metaphors that I use, and I'm going to share my screen and show like a little bit of a time lapse.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, so for me, the inspiration was really my daughter, who is now 4 years old, Imani, and I wanted to have a tool to basically teach her to begin to really continue the process of teaching her to be anti-racist. And we had used books in many different ways to teach her things. So to give an example, we recently moved to Boston. And so a few months ago, when we realized this was probably going to be happening, we bought a book about a little girl who moved. And after reading the book, she was like, you know what, I want to move. And we were like, okay, let's move. No, but, in all seriousness, we wanted a tool that can really begin this process. And I knew the data. I knew the data that showed that even infants begin seeing race. I knew that as early as 2 years old, children begin discerning the behavior of people around them based on their race, essentially having already consumed racist ideas. And I also knew that I did not necessarily have the language to really talk to a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old or even a 4-year-old about how to be anti-racist. Because I think one thing about caregivers is it's one thing to tell a child what not to be. I think it's even more important to share with them how they should be. And so I thought this book could help us with Imani. And I suspect other parents were struggling as well and we're looking for tools as well. And I also thought that there were also many parents who believed that their children were colorblind. And so I was also hoping that this book would start a conversation, would allow people to stare at the face of the data that states that we need to be teaching our children to be anti-racist, because if we're not, then they're ultimately going to be raised to be racist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love, what you said about having this as a tool to show babies not just what not to be, but what this world can be, like really showing the vision. And that's a lot of what I do with my work. Is there are so many oppressive, racist structures that we need to dismantle and destroy and build anew, but we need to also know what that's going to look like. And we need to be able to dream and imagine, and to be able to have a tool that helps parents do this imagination work with their kids is really beautiful, and something that gives me a lot of hope.
Definitely. And even also to inspire conversations. And so what I find in reading books to my daughter, especially when she started talking, is, she would ask questions. And certainly, I suspect when parents when parents read this book to their young people, at some point they may ask questions. Just like if we take them to a demonstration, they're going to ask questions. And that I found that, like adults, when people ask questions, they're curious, and we're not as invested in someone lecturing to us. So, it's also to really get those young people to really ask questions and even to encourage parents to have these conversations. Can you imagine, like, we have 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds who are uncomfortable talking about racism. And so can you imagine if we were all talking about racism since we were 2 years old? Since we were 1 year old, ever since we could talk, how much easier it would be when we're older.
And also just having this tool available to parents who might be new and having these kinds of conversations in general, right? It's like you need to pair this with a lot of deeper learning and exploration work and reflection work for the caregivers and parents, because they also need to be able to answer those questions when they come up.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in a way, it compels the parents to do their own research. But at the same time, I think what I love the most, even about the illustrations, is that really, in many ways, love and different kinds of love, really displays itself. And I think inherent in being anti-racist is love. And so I just wanted to say to you, publicly, I mean, that it really sort of, I think, speaks to that.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. It made me really happy to read your post about it earlier, just talking about how this book does really portray a lot of different kinds of love. And that was something that was really important to me in my interpretation of this, is just that I wanted people to feel celebrated. I want all kinds of families to be able to share this with their children and feel reflected in it and feel their love reflected in it, because it really is. Like, anti-racism is love. Seeking justice is love. Dismantling racist structures is love at the end of the day. The thing that powers all of this is our deep love for one another and desire to create a better world for our children.
Precisely. So I guess should we read the book?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, I'm going to open this up so I can share the screen. 1 second. All right, I'm gonna put this on slideshow. Let me know if you can see this all right.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
All right, so I'll start. Antiracist baby is bred, not born. Antiracist baby is raised to make society transform. Babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There's no neutrality. Take these 9 steps to make equity a reality. 1, open your eyes to all skin colors. Anti-racist baby learns all the colors, not because race is true. If you claim to be colorblind, you deny what's right in front of you. 2, use your words to talk about race. No one will see racism if we only stay silent. If we don't name racism, it won't stop being violent. So violent. 3, point at policies as the problem, not people. Some people get more while others get less because policies don't always grant equal access. 4, shout, there's nothing wrong with the people. Imani loves shouting that. Even though all races are not treated the same, we are all human, anti-racist baby can proclaim. 5, celebrate all our differences. Anti-racist baby doesn't see certain groups as better or worse. Anti-racist baby loves a world that's truly diverse. 6, knock down the stack of cultural blocks. Yeah, Imani would always do this. Anti-racist baby appreciates how groups speak, dance, and create as they choose. Anti-racist baby welcomes all groups voicing their unique views. 7, confess when being racist. Nothing disrupts racism more than when we confess the racist ideas that we sometimes express. 8, grow to be in Antiracist. Antiracist Baby is always learning, changing, and growing. Antiracist Baby stays curious about all people and isn't all-knowing. 9, believe we shall overcome racism. Antiracist Baby is filled with the power to transcend, my friend, and doesn't judge a book by its cover, but reads until the end.
Yay!
Yes. So you want to share some, I guess you want to go through it and maybe share some ideas about.
Yeah, well, also thank you for reading it. I was just smiling the whole time because it's so incredible to just hear it in your voice. You're such a good narrator. I guess you're very used to talking, but it was really cool to hear you just read it all.
I think I've been practicing. I didn't want to mess it up tonight.
So yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit about what the process was like after Kokila first reached out to me. And, you know, in a lot of projects like this, there isn't a lot of art direction aside from just getting the manuscript and maybe a few suggestions here and there. And so a lot of this was really up to my interpretation of your words, Dr. Kendi, which was challenging and fun. And, you know, it's hard. It's not hard, but it's a challenging feat to illustrate really dense topics to babies in a way that still shows lightness and sense of hope and is able to communicate these ideas without being too overt or violent, you know? Yeah. And I think your words already do a really good job of doing that and talking about systemic violence, you know? So something that comes to mind is, I have a copy right here. Use your words to talk about race. No one will see racism if we only stay silent. If we don't name racism, it won't stop being so violent. And this idea that racism isn't just interpersonal, obviously some of it is, but a lot of it is just because of the systems that we live in. And so I wanted to show this ladder, which represents the systems that are not made to treat people equally. And so there's a white person able to climb to the top of the ladder and grab the trophy, while the darker skinned person is at the bottom on a broken ladder, because not because of anything that they did wrong or anything that says anything about their ability, but just the systems that are in place. And I hope that images like this are able to get kids to ask their parents, you know, why is this ladder broken? Why, what's wrong? Why is this person getting a trophy when the other person isn't? And then being able to draw that towards the end and thinking about anti-racism as an active practice, and how, you know, if you look at the last page, the white person is helping to repair that broken ladder so that their friend can succeed. So just little moments like that were just details I wanted to add in that would hopefully catch children's attention and spur more questions. But I really wanted this book to have like a light, hopeful demeanor, because I do think that, you know, all kids are born good. They only learn racism because of the world that we live in. And I also want them to be equipped to imagine a world outside of the one that we live in. And a lot of what inspires this work in general is, a lot of people say this, but I heard it from Adrienne Marie Brown, that we're living in the imagination of rich white men. They created these systems that we live in. They don't just exist because they're natural, right? And so how do we teach kids to believe in their imaginations enough to make them real? Because we have the power to create a better world. But going back to the process of the book, you know, I start with paper and pencil for everything. So I wanted to show some sketches. And this is when I was thinking about that at first. I was like, how can I show inequality? How do I really show that? And I was thinking mountains, staircases, and then I kind of settled on ladder because it was something that I could show that could be clearly broken. But everything kind of starts as this like paper and pencil, and then I take it into my iPad and I play around and add colors, and I'll show you guys some of that in a little bit. But another one that I wanted to point out is the butterfly analogy.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, because Dr. Kendi says, point out policies as the problem, not people. Some people get more while others get less because policies don't always grant equal access. And that is something that's so important. And I didn't want to show, you know, these are the people who benefit. These are the people who don't benefit. I wanted to use something that was just like really relatable for children and still has like dreamlike quality, I guess, which is butterflies to me. I personally love butterflies. And so this pink butterfly, who I think we all know who that stands for, the pink butterfly is white people in the front, able to drink from this flower, kind of minding their own business. Meanwhile, the other butterflies in the back are being caught by this white net, and unable to drink the nectar. And I wanted to show that, you know, this butterfly represents people who have systemic privileges and sometimes don't even know it. You know, the purpose of being anti-racist is also to recognize the things that you've benefited from and actively trying to dismantle those same systems. And sometimes the people in those positions of privilege don't even recognize that. So I wanted to call attention to that. And also that it is this net. The net represents historical redlining. It represents racist institutions. It represents the military industrial complex. It represents so many things. And it's also up to the parent to decide how they want to explain this systemic net that is catching people of color. Prominently Black and brown people in this country. But I still wanted to show that in a way where it's not so blatant. So it's open to explanation and to deeper conversation. Yeah.
And I think it's also, I think in a way that there's an illustrative text that I think that, you know, there's the text. So, you know, a 2-year-old may not be able to understand policies, but a 2-year-old can be taught to understand what policies mean through the illustrations. And I think that's, you know, one of the things we try to do with Imani is we will use a word like policy, or, you know, the other day she said she's frustrated. And apparently she knows what that means now because we were saying and we explained it. But, you know, young people can learn. And so we can begin teaching them the language, the vocabulary of racism, just as we're trying to teach them forms of other vocabulary as early as possible. And obviously, what a policy is, you know, you could certainly talk about rules and fairness and unfairness. And clearly it's not fair that one butterfly to eat and another butterfly is being taken away. I mean, a child understands that because at least ever since my daughter could talk, she was saying things were unfair. Or that certain people were, you know, why couldn't she get this? And so, you know, I don't think we should underestimate the ability of our little ones to learn and to understand this.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Of course.
And yeah, and something else that I really wanted to do with my part of this book was just to not only normalize all kinds of families, but celebrate them. As a queer person, I wanted there to be a lot of queerness in this book too. And it was really just joyful to do this page and be able to show a lot of different families. And Ibram, this hairstyle was definitely inspired by you. And it was just, I just remember drawing this and just feeling so happy and joyful. And like, I was just able to create this world that I want to live in. You know, I want kids and all different families to see this and think, oh, that looks like my parents. And maybe they haven't been able to ever experience that before.
Yeah. And I think what this means is, when we think of queer love, or I should say queer couples, we obviously should not just think of queer couples or Black couples or interracial couples or Latinx or Asian or any other group from the standpoint of oppression, in terms of how hard it is for them to be together or to love or to be Black or to be queer. Yes, certainly there's a place for that. And certainly I want people to understand the nature of racism and even homophobia, and certainly its intersection. But we should also, that's one of I love this page too, because we have to normalize through art what's possible. And in many ways, behind closed doors, this is normal. It's just when folks go out into hostile spaces, that this is not normal. And so certainly for our children, to be able, when we're in, obviously, the protective spaces that we try to put our children, these many forms of love, these many forms of many different sort of kinds of people, while simultaneously recognizing all those kinds is on the same level and equals, despite their differences, I just thought was a very important aspect of this book.
Mm-hmm. This book really is a celebration of love. Like looking through it and talking about it with you just really highlights that with me. Yeah. Definitely. Okay. So for my last little show and tell, I'm going to show how another spread came to be. Let's see. All right. So this is another one of my favorite pages, and I'm going to just show you how. So you can see it's literally a picture of a sketch that I had taken. You can see part of the desk on the side right here. And I have this small picture that I was using from the other spread to just kind of remember what the people look like, because sometimes I work in different styles and I need to make sure that I'm not making all the pages look different. That was just kind of a reminder for myself. And this person who I'm drawing right now is my friend Michelle and her baby Aki, who was a really big help to me in this book, because I also wanted to give the kids really cool clothes. But as someone who's not a parent and I don't have a lot of babies in my life, I was just like, I don't know what cute babies are wearing nowadays. She sent me like all of these links to like very cool baby clothes, which I use as inspiration for a lot of this book, which I'm very thankful to her for. And when this book came out, she came over to pick up a copy. She sent me this video of Aki, her child, reading it and pointing to that page and saying, "It's Mommy and Aki."
Oh, wow.
So happy. But yeah, you can see just kind of how this all comes together. And I don't know if you noticed this, but when I first started drawing this, the person in front holding the kid's hand was a woman. And I realized I had a lot of moms, but not that many dads. And, typically a lot of the brunt of emotional labor and talking about difficult topics often falls on the mother. And I wanted this kind of to be a representation and an encouragement for dads, or, more masculine caretaker figures to be able to share that responsibility and, have the onus be on them to have these conversations too.
Wow.
I'll just skip ahead a little bit. I changed the trees like 20 times. I'm not really sure why. I'm just like have a hard time deciding. But I like where I ended on this one. Yeah. And yep, there I go, changing the branches again. And then that's it.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think that is kind of the end of me sharing about my process. So if you want to open it up to some questions.
Yeah, let's take questions.
All right, thank you so much for that. That was amazing. It was so great to hear your words, Dr. Kendi, and to see your images, Ashley, together, and to have you both do that together. That it was just very special. So thank you for doing that. All right, so we have more than several questions. There's still time to ask questions. If you want to go below to ask the question section, you can either put your own questions in there, or you can vote on questions, the ones that you especially want to have answered. And I'm just going to read everything that, in terms of engagement, because people really want to engage with you both. I'm just going to read questions as they come up. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, our first question is from Adrian Dresser. He asks, what advice would you give to teachers of color who seek to promote an anti-racist culture in a predominantly white classroom?
Well, I think precisely what we've been talking about. I think first and foremost, to normalize difference and to really ensure that even though that classroom is predominantly white, you can still provide resources and books that display and teach the cultures and the lives of many different groups of people. There can also be a commitment to really trying to get the students to realize why racial disparities may be existing in their city or in their town, and for them to think through and do assignments in which they're thinking through the actual conditions that are leading to those disparities, the policies behind those conditions, rather than what's wrong with the people.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Lori Hamilton. She asks, how do we frame this conversation with, say, middle school age children, that creating an anti-racist world is a marathon, not a sprint, and that we are all in this, adults and children, together?
Ashley, did you want to?
You can start.
I don't want to okay. I don't want to answer. So, I think that for middle school students, I think they probably can understand an addiction to substance abuse, as an example, and really the striving, particularly if you're an adult and you're only beginning the process to be anti-racist, how in many ways you've been addicted to racism your whole life, and you were in denial about your addiction. And ultimately you came to a realization about that addiction. And now, like with anyone else seeking to overcome an addiction, it's a never ending, it's even longer than a marathon. Like it's a never ending sort of process. In other words, you, like anyone who's overcoming an addiction, it's a day by day, moment by moment process. And even at times you're going to make mistakes, and to admit those mistakes and to make sure those mistakes don't harm. And certainly if they do harm, then so I think it's critically important I think you can teach that to middle school students.
Yeah, and I really like what you said, Dr. Kendi, but I think that this book and so many texts that are geared towards children are a great way to start, to say, you as children have the power. It's not, this isn't just something for adults to deal with. It is we can vote, and we can show up in certain ways that children can't, but children really have the ability to, like, I talk about imagination a lot, but they really have the ability to picture things in a way that aren't jaded and that aren't so tarnished by seeing the same violence play over and over again. And I think you can also just stress to your middle school age child that, like, in a lot of ways they have more potential than a lot of older people. Being young doesn't make you less powerful. It actually makes you more powerful. so much more time to do this long marathon learning and unlearning. And we are all constantly on this path of learning, you know, and we talk about being in this commitment together.
Yeah.
To continue in this deepening work.
Okay. Thank you. The next question is from Lee King. He asks, and this is really for both of you as well, what other kids' board books and books for parents do you recommend?
Oh man, where do I even?
Yeah, there's so many good ones.
Yeah, I mean some books that I think Imani really likes. She likes Hair Love. She likes the Water Protectors.
Yeah.
She likes Where Are We From, which is a book about a little Latinx girl who's asking, I believe, her elder about their history. And I mean, there's so many great books these days, but I would first and foremost recommend those two.
Okay. Ashley?
I am, as a person who does not have a child, I don't really know about the other board books, but a book that I would really recommend people of all ages to read is Pet by Akwa Kiemezi. And it, as a 27-year-old, I know it's for children, but I was so deeply inspired by it and the kind of imaginative world building that they do in their book that I think it's really perfect for all ages. I bought one for my little cousin, but it begins with this world where we've abolished the prison industrial complex, where we have transformative justice just flowing through society, and where queerness is really celebrated and normalized. And I think that's like a wonderful book for people of all ages to read.
Somebody in the comments wrote one book that they recommend. This was associated with the question that was just asked. Something Happened in Our Town. His name is Asim, and he said he's read it several times to his daughters who are 4 and 6.
Yeah, we have that book.
Yeah.
And I think for parents also, just like continuing to do your own anti-racist readings and research and learning about the systems that we live in. I love End of Policing by Alex Vital. Reading about abolition, reading Miriam Kaba's work, Ruth Wilson Gilmore. There's so much out there. Yeah. And so I know that's why you're asking the question. You're literally asking for recommendations, but I would start there too.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is from Audrey and Isla Scritchfield. They're from Murch Elementary School. They write, we are 6 and 7-year-old white girls living in DC. Are there any clubs or groups that help little activists learn and grow? Should we start a club at our school?
Yes. If you don't have one, if you don't have an anti-racist club or an activist club, you should start one and make some change.
Yeah. Someone in the comments wrote it would be an idea to start an interracial dialogue group at the school. Okay. Let's see. Our next question, their handle is Disquarius Green Jr., and he asks, it kind of goes along with the other question about board books, but it opens up a little bit more. What books of color would you recommend?
Oh man, there's so many. I mean, I'm actually pulling up to see some books that, because I don't even know how many books we have for Imani, particularly books of color, but and let me just say, I think it's critically important for people to get books that show many different types of babies. So, yeah, Imani really likes All Are Welcome. She really likes The Day You Begin by, of course, the great Jacqueline Woodson. She really likes Woke Baby by Mahogany Brown. She likes, let's see, yeah, there's so many. Sulwe by Lupita.
Nyong'o, yeah.
Happy in Our Skin. She likes A for Activist. She likes a beautiful book called The Proudest Blue, a story of hijab and family. Okay, I'm gonna stop there because I can just go
Those
on
are
and
great.
on.
Those are some of my favorites. Yeah, those are great. Ashley, do you want to add? I know you don't have too many kids in your life, but do you have any others that you want to?
No, I think that he answered it.
Okay, great. All right. The next question is from Deborah Schwartz. She asks, would Dr. Kendi share a short definition explaining the clear difference between racism and anti-racism?
Sure. So I define racism as a powerful collection of racist policies that lead to racial inequity and are substantiated by racist ideas. And so essentially what we understand as a structure, a system of connected policies that then lead to these inequities and injustices that are all around us. And then people believe that there's something inferior about Black or Native people, and so they should have less. And so that then substantiates the racist policies. In other words, people believe Black people are more dangerous, so therefore they should be 40% of the incarcerated population. And and the problem is Black criminality, not the series of racist policies that is leading to their mass incarceration. So in other words, the racist ideas are then substantiating the racist policies. The racist ideas are normalizing the racial inequity. By contrast, anti-racism is a powerful collection of anti-racist policies that lead to equity and are substantiated by anti-racist ideas. In other words, you have this structure and system of measures and policies that are ensuring or maintaining or defending equity and justice. And people believe it should be equitable, or that no group should have more because they believe all the groups are equals.
Thank you. Our next question is from Atticus Lou Jackson. He asks, so what you're saying is that humans are inherently racist? Is his question?
So actually what we find is that babies, when they're born at zero, they actually do not tend to look longer at the race of people, or I should say people who share the same race as their caretakers. But by 3 months, they're already doing that. And so what that means is that indeed people are socialized even as early in the first 3 months to begin to understand race, and really race is almost like the pie, and I should say the pie crust, and the racist ideas are essentially what fills in for those racial concepts. And so nobody is literally born racist. And when you say a human being is inherently or by nature racist, you're essentially saying that we are born racist, and that we can't create a different type of society in which we're raising babies to be anti-racist, and then we're raising toddlers to be anti-racist, and we're raising middle schoolers and high schoolers and adults to be anti-racist, and it's normal for people to not be fearful of a Black body. Like, we can actually create that type of world, but we have to actually build it.
Thank you. The next question is from Kathy Duffy. She a comment and a question. A lot of systematic racism is embedded in educational institutions. Oh, sorry, I just lost it. Here we go. Give me a second. Sorry. A lot of racism is embedded in the educational institutions, with competition beginning at very young ages to get ahead for access to the best, brightest, gifted paths for higher achievement? How do we dismantle our goal-oriented socialization to allow acceptance and imagination to find new avenues?
Ashley, you want
No. I'll pass that to you.
to? Well, I think that so, I think that when people talk about success, many Americans consider success to be how much money or wealth you have, how much prestige or even power you have, or even how many people, sort of know about you. And so when it comes to, there are specific pathways to wealth or even to power. And typically those pathways are sort of ensuring children get into certain types of schools and certain types of places and certain types of colleges and in certain types of jobs. And so I think if we had a completely different perspective on what success is, or if we didn't even have a perspective on success as a person to begin with, like we had a perspective of, I am seeking to finish a book. And so I'm successful today because I finished that book. But we didn't have this general concept of, I want to be a successful adult, or I want my child to be successful. If we had a perspective of, I want my child to find happiness. I want my child to find love. I want my child to be able to really connect with her sense of self with what she does for a living. I want my child to bring goodness to the world. And parents collectively had those types of aspirations for their kids. It wouldn't be as important as to whether they got into Stanford or Harvard. It wouldn't be as important as to whether they became an investment banker. Like those things would be completely irrelevant because they are irrelevant to concepts like happiness and love and goodness. If anything, they're against that in many cases.
Okay, thank you. I think both of you might want to chime in about this one. The handle the person uses Bernie's Socialist Feast, and the question is, do you think the top 1% needs to be doing more about racism?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate, or do you want to go on to the next question? Okay. This is from Ingrid. She's wondering, what are the ideal ages for children to read and absorb the messages?
So when parents think of teaching their children or even reading to their children or even raising their children to be kind or even to love, typically parents don't think about, okay, maybe I don't think a 1-year-old understands kindness. Or, maybe I should wait until my child is 5 years old to really teach them about love. And I'm saying that because, I am in my mid-30s and I'm still learning what love is. I'm still, learning what kindness is, particularly within different cultures, and among different types of people, notions of kindness, can be different. And so, we think of these ideas as very simple, but they're actually deeply sophisticated. Just as, talking about race and racism sounds to us as it's extremely sophisticated, but there are basic aspects of racism that we can begin talking to our young people about. So even before they fully understand it. And so I think with these other concepts like kindness and love and respect and goodness, we teach kids even before they can completely understand it. And we should be doing the same thing with race and racism.
Yes, thank you. This is a question for both of you, and the process.
Ashley, do you want to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, Ashley.
I think we should go back to the top. I got a lot of votes. The LGBTQIA question.
You want to go to that one? Sure.
Yeah. Will you read that one?
Yeah, of course. Okay. She writes, no, I'm sorry. I don't know. Let me see. The person's Melinda Stevens. She asks, Miss Lukashevsky, on your bio, you wrote that your work focuses on issues including LGBTQIA plus equality. I have generally used LGBTQIA plus as well, although I recently received a complaint from a student who identifies as pansexual. They explain that they feel marginalized when lumped in with a plethora of other orientations and identities under a single plus sign. How should I deal with these concerns?
I am an expert on how to address this as an educator, but I would say that a way to approach this would be to make sure that you're highlighting in the way that you teach and talk about queerness or LGBTQIA plus identities, that you are highlighting all of the identities that fall under, that currently are named under that terminology, and highlighting what pansexuality means, what kinds of people identify as that, who are people in the public eye who identified that way, and also really highlight, because there is obviously a different acceptability to each of these identities as they also intersect with other identities that that person holds. And I think especially right now, we need to be talking with kids about how Black trans women are constantly targeted and killed for existing. And they're obviously not all queer people experience life the same way. And yeah, highlighting each of those issues that falls under the LGBTQIA umbrella. You know, obviously there's distinction and difference and oppressions that people face differently.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a question for the two of you about how you work together. It's from Patricia. She would like to know, how much did you collaborate with each other during the process of the writing, with the illustration process?
So, this is the first time we've met.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge believer in, you know, letting people do what they do best and not, you know, and I know as a writer, there's a process to from the beginning to the end. And I prefer for my editors or my collaborators to not see it until it's the finished sort of product. Because if they see one of those early drafts, they're gonna be like, oh my God, like that is and so for me, I felt it was critically important for Ashley to have the freedom to be inspired and to sort of think through how she wanted to do this completely sort of on her own accord. And I know that I suspect, I know for me, that's more helpful. And so that's what, you know, I wanted to sort of do. I don't know what she thought about that, but.
No, I liked it. I like creative freedom, and yeah, actually didn't see your but I didn't judge you. So. But yeah, we had only met via email before this, some email communication, but I really did appreciate the creative freedom, and there were check-ins where I would send in like first drafts to the whole team, and Ibram would give comments on it, but his comments were always like very chill. They're like, that's great, keep going.
Awesome. All right, we have time for probably one more question. So we're going to go with a question by Marcy. And she asks, at the end of How to Be an Anti-Racist, you say that there's nothing giving me hope that one day anti-racists will win the fight. Do you still feel that way?
Well, actually, I think what I write is that when I don't really necessarily gather hope based on the reality of life, or what's happening or what's not happening today. What I actually was writing in that passage was that, I gather hope because I believe you have to believe change is possible in order to bring it about. As Ashley and I have been talking, you can't bring about change if you can't even imagine it, right? And we through this book, have been really trying to unlock, or I should say not unlock, because it's really the unlocking of adults' imaginations, allowing the imagination of young people to continue to flower and to imagine a different type of world, a different type of love, a different sort of sense of their relationship with other people who have different skin colors and hair textures. And that's critical in order to bring change, to this world.
Ashley, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. I know that it's hard to feel hopeful a lot of times, and I feel weirdly hopeful right now. Like Miriam Kaba says, hope is a discipline. You refine that daily, and the things that give me hope are seeing the uprisings. I have so much hope in us. I have so much hope in young people. I have so much hope and just belief in the Black women organizers and non-binary organizers who are at the front of this movement. And I am really hopeful because of them.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you both so much for your powerful words and your powerful actions. I feel like you are these beacons of hope and justice in this time of change. And thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you, viewers, for being here and engaging and asking good questions. And I know that I have a lot of work to do. And thank you all thank you for your words. It's so powerful and so meaningful. So I just want to see if there's any last things that you want to say before we end our event.
Thank you, Ashley, for this beautiful book.
I just want to say thank you, Ibram, for letting me come along for this ride. And it was really, I feel very grateful to have been a part of this, and I'm really excited to see how the babies like it.
Yeah. And you have your opportunity, if you want to click on the green button, you can buy your own copy of Antiracist Baby. Thank you all so much. We look forward to seeing you again here on the platform, and please keep reading. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.